Welcome to the brokenNotbroke interview, the leading podcast for families impacted by childhood cancer. I know the situation is very difficult for you, for your child, for your entire family. I've been there since 2022. But I can tell you that the more information you have about the resources available, the journey can be easier. At brokenNotbroke.org, you can have access to more than 500 nonprofit organizations offering financial assistance and resources nationwide to families like yours. We're also going to talk to the executive director of the Cavett Kids Foundation, Ashley Simpson. The Cavett Kids Foundation is a very innovative organization that provides camps and programs to children with chronic illnesses. We'll also have our money insight of the day. So let's start. Hi, welcome to the Broken Not Broke interview. I'm very happy to have here with us Ashley Simpson, the executive director of the Cavett Kids Foundation in Oklahoma. Thank you for being with us, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
So let me start with the mission. We know that it has an incredible mission of helping children with chronic illnesses. But what inspired the creation of this foundation, and how that original mission guide your work today?
So our mission is to develop character, coping, and connection for kids battling life-threatening illnesses. And really at the heart of our organization, our founder, Danny Cavett, he was serving as a chaplain at our local healthcare system here called OU Health. He started in 1977. He started working, they worked pediatrics and adults. And he was working specifically in the kidney unit, pediatric dialysis, and he just saw that these kids weren't living life like kids should. They were strapped to these machines. The treatment was way different than it is today, and their outlook and livelihood didn't have great outcomes at that time. And he kind of just loves the outdoors and wanted to do something and believes that it's great to get outside, and that's part of your mental health journey. We had our very first camp for kidney disease in 1978. From there, it just kind of spiraled. And then actually our cancer clinic, pediatric cancer clinic, reached out and said, well, will you do something for us? And Danny loves snow skiing. And in Winter Park, Colorado, they actually have a big ski school for the disabled program. So lots of adaptive skiing there. That was the next step. Started a ski camp specifically for kids battling cancer. And at that time, we had a lot of kids who were missing limbs. So partnering with that ski school was great because it gave all of them an opportunity. We had kids right in the middle of treatment. We're still getting an opportunity to go snow skiing for spring break. And then he thought, well, why are we separating everyone? Everyone can learn from each other. And so then that inspired another camp session, and that was for all children with illnesses. And it kind of just continued to go from there. And today, what that looks like is 8 different camps. We have 4 in the state of Oklahoma and 4 out of state. We serve every chronic or life-threatening illness affecting your physical body. Our number one camper population continues to be cancer patients. I just think it's impacted on such a great level. We end up having a lot more campers that are battling cancer. Still today, we have all of those camp sessions. They're no longer disease specific because what we found is we would have kids that would never fit that box. Or our heart patients would say, well, it's not my fault I can't learn how to snow ski because I don't have cancer. And then the kids that had cancer would say, well, it's not my fault I can't go see the beach because I don't have a GI condition. We're like, you know what? You're right. So we wanted to make it more of an age-based reward for our teenagers. And it expanded from there. So we have 8 camps, 4 ongoing programs. Because what we realized is we needed support services beyond the camps as well.
Oh, what a wonderful origin story. Very inspiring. And I love many things of this story. One of them is the realization that kids with chronic illnesses of different nature could learn, be with each other, and families, I'm sure, also could be part of the journeys of different illnesses. It is very common to see programs for pediatric oncology heart diseases, other chronic illnesses, but not one that brings them together. And I think that's just a fantastic opportunity to create a community.
It is a bit rare, and I think that's what makes it so special. One of my favorite camp memories, we were at our leadership camp, and I was staying in the cabin with the girls, and they were staying up late talking, and I was listening to them. And there was a girl with heart condition and GI conditions, a cancer survivor, type 1 diabetes. And the girl with type 1 diabetes was like, I almost feel guilty for being here. Like, I'm not as sick as you all. And they're like, no, no, no. Like, think about when you were diagnosed. You almost died and you didn't know what was going on. And I loved how they validated her that no one is worse off than the other. And then they found similarities in their treatment. And they learned that, sometimes kidney disease patients, especially kidney transplant, also get chemo sometimes. So it's cool to see them share with each other and find the similarities and just validate everyone's experience.
Absolutely. What a great anecdote. We know that when you have a chronic illness in children, there's many challenges besides the medical one, social, emotional. Could you tell us more about that and how Cavett Kids address them?
That's a big thing. And that is what really shapes and inspires all of our programming. When you have an illness, everything in life is structured for you. You have to take these medicines at certain times. You have these appointments. It seems like your life is very scheduled and structured, and you don't sometimes have a lot of choice. So at our camps, when it's open activity time, we run all the activities and they get to choose. Doesn't matter where their cabin's going. They can choose. So if you want to spend all day long on go-karts, you can spend all day long on go-karts. I love that they have that freedom. And it's such a small thing, but it's a big thing for someone's life who feels so structured. Beyond the camps, we started realizing too, we started partnering with local children's hospitals here to help bring some fun and joy and support their child life and volunteer programs, and just helping create a space that when the parents and kids are waiting for their appointments, that's less stressful. We call it our diversionary play program. So we partner and we come make arts and crafts, do games, silly holiday parties, something that helps pass that weight where you remember doing something fun and it's kind of engaging. And then the kids are less stressed when they go back to see the doctor. So it makes everything run smoother. From there, one of the next things was emergency family support financially, because there's always going to be something that comes up. So many times you have an average family, everything is going great, and then suddenly maybe your income is cut in half because you have a child with a diagnosis who's inpatient for a month. I think sometimes employers are lenient at first, but not always. That doesn't always stay. And sometimes it very much financially impacts the families. It is direct support for funeral assistance, because I don't think anyone's ever really planning to bury their child, but that's the reality of it. We have utilities, mortgage or rent, gas and groceries. People say, well, there's government assistance. And it's like, yeah, there is. They can reimburse mileage, but it might take 3 or 4 months before you ever see that first reimbursement check. And if you're traveling from, rural Oklahoma to Oklahoma City and gas isn't cheap, that's a big expense that you weren't prepared to front. So we make it pretty low barrier. We don't make you jump through a lot of hoops. We just want to take that burden and that immediate stress off. And then another program that we started seeing about 10 years ago was what we call transitions. So in medicine, when you are growing up with a chronic illness and in a children's hospital setting, and then it's time to transitions to adult, they can take you there, introduce you to the doctors, show you where it's at. Most young people still won't go. I do think part of it does have to do with the invincible mindset at that age. You feel fine, everything's fine, you don't need to do that, and you want to push that aside. But it's so necessary, and what they're seeing is they're actually having worse health outcomes because they're not prepared to take on their own health care. And at 18, you're magically responsible for a lot of things, doesn't mean you're ready. So we use this program to learn to teach life skills So basic things from what to do if you're in a car wreck. What does your car insurance mean? How to make a budget? What does it look like when you rent your first place? Should you have renter's insurance? How do credit scores work? But then they also learn about setting up their primary care doctor, questions to ask their doctor, and how to advocate for your own health care and your own needs in the workspace or at school, but learning how to be an advocate for themselves.
Well, interesting program, and I think it's very unique. I personally haven't heard one that specifically thinks of the transition to adulthood. One thing that we notice when we talk to families is that when they are impacted by a chronic illness, and this financial hardship also comes with it. At the beginning, it's manageable for some families, but if this is a medium long-term disease, that's when things get very complicated. What will you tell families in terms of when to reach out to your foundation for financial assistance?
I tell people, don't wait until it's a day of emergency. Don't be scared to ask for help. We exist to help and support. We're not here to dig into your finances and ask questions or make judgments. We understand that life looks different, and it's something that no family prepared for. And I think organizations really do just want to help. Everyone has different hoops and things that they require. Ours is low barrier, but we just hate when we see these requests come through and they say, my water's getting shut off today. That's a big need. There's so many things. If you would speak up, your social worker can inform you on, we have local programs where if you have a medical waiver, utilities cannot be shut off. Now you can still rack up the bill, but they won't shut it off. So that could be in place. And then someone like us could step in and help, take the load off and fill some of those gaps and share with other partners, other resources, things to tap into. But as soon as it starts to feel like a burden for you, I feel like that's when it's time to reach out. When it starts to be a burden, you should share.
So don't wait. That's the key. Something else that we notice with chronic illnesses is that are not necessarily visible to everyone. Some of them might be not immediately visible, or how do you address that? And what are your observations in terms of the importance of acknowledging that and guiding illnesses of this type?
So prior to joining the Cavett Kids Foundation, all of my experience had been in working with pediatric cancer communities. And so that is typically a very visual illness for the most part. And you can really see that a child is sick. And I think sometimes when you think sick child, you think of that, But what I learned with Cavett Kids, one of my very first trips that I went, it was a heart patient, and they were about to go in for their 7th open heart surgery, and as a teenager. And I was like, wow. And just looking at them, I would never know, have no clue. And, it's just one of those, if you could see the scar, you would know the story. And it got me thinking, how many people are walking around, maybe they have severe GI conditions, maybe they have kidney disease or other things that you can hide those scars and that visual story. And how quick do we as a society judge? I tell people I used to be the worst judger of a handicapped parking spot, like, you don't look handicapped. What are you doing parking there? And at the reality of it, you may not know they could have 30% lung capacity and they're doing all they can to walk into that grocery store. So just realizing that not every serious illness is visible and just giving people a little grace and kind of just figuring out and understanding their stories. Whenever these kids would open up and share with me their stories and what all they've really gone through, it's like, wow, they're the bravest people. I tell people too, I'm like, I'm a big weenie too when it comes to needles. When I have to go for labs, I think if they can do it, I can do it. So
thank you for sharing those observations. Tell us about families, caregivers. How do they come into your community?
So we mainly focus on serving the child, but it really becomes a family. What we understand is that when families have a child with a serious illness, everything is wrapped up around their care. That becomes the life focus, right? But there's still other things. Maybe it's a couple that haven't been on a date night in months because they haven't been able to get away. Maybe there's other kids in the home that haven't got quite as much as your attention because you've been focusing on this one. So that's why at our camps, we actually only allow the child with the diagnosis to come, and we're very strict on it. And they say, well, what if I volunteer? And we just gracefully say, no, thank you. But we'll send you lots of photos because it's good for the camper to learn independence. They can start to learn to take care of themselves. We had a camper who was old enough he could have been staying the night with his friends and things, but he had a medical procedure that only his mom did for him at night. And so sleeping over at a friend's house was embarrassing because he wouldn't know how to do it. And at his very first camp, our medical team taught him how to do this procedure every night. And he gained so much independence. He started getting to hang out with other friends and even got on a traveling wheelchair basketball team. And I don't think that would have been an option if he wouldn't been encouraged to learn it on his own. So that's such a great thing for their independence. But then maybe for the family, they need a date night or some special time with the kids. So it's important that we have that. And then while they're at camp, we also try to do things outside of camp that are for the whole family. So a few weeks ago, we had our annual family picnic, and that's the whole immediate family. So the kids who may wonder what they get to do at camp get a little glimpse of that, and they can come zip lining with us and do all the activities. And it just welcomes them all to a community, and it gives the families time to just talk and be together. And something new that we're hoping to launch this summer is at our largest camp of the year, when the parents are waiting for the bus to come and drop the kids back off home. We're partnering with a counseling agency here to kind of facilitate a parents group while they're waiting. They're all going to be there anyways. So we might as well offer that and we've been wondering, what do our families need? Is it a weekend retreat for just the families? And maybe the conversation is specialized in what they're going through. So we're kind of just keeping our ears open to shape some future programming, but we definitely see creating a space for the families to talk is very important.
Absolutely. What a great new program you're envisioning. You mentioned some of the topics that are addressed or discussed during camp, leadership or life skills. Are there others you want to share with us that you think are important for your patients?
We use the camp atmosphere because it's fun, right? You get to go, there's a lot of fun activities. And then our travel camps, you get a chance to go to Pensacola Beach, Florida, and stay on the beach, go see the dolphins. We have trips in the mountains and whitewater rafting and trips to the desert. So we have these fun things to draw people in, right? And because we always hear, and they're like, I don't want to go to a sick kid camp. And we're like, okay, well, it's not a sick kid camp. Yes, that is who we're serving. We promise it's going to be fun. We're going to treat you like any other kid. And that's kind of how we get them there. But you use the fun to teach. So we survey the kids every year during one of our largest sessions. And there's things like independence, confidence, friendship making, how well they know their medicine and the names of their medicine and their med schedules. So there's a variety of things we survey them on prior to camp and then on the last day of camp. And so we use those surveys, and the ones that aren't growing quite as much is how we kind of shape our education for the year. So some felt, one of the things that we started seeing, a few campers felt more defined by their illness after camp, that they couldn't do some of the activities that some of the other kids did. So we dug into those, and what we realized was it was our kids with lung disease who were not able to keep up with some of the other kids. So that taught us that we need to add some other activities that are a little more low impact, that they wouldn't be as out of breath and won't feel left behind by their peers. So one of the biggest things that happens through our programming is communication and friendship building. A lot of our kids miss out on school or other activities that help them learn problem solving, teamwork, friendship. Maybe they're not getting to do sports or other social activities and clubs at school because they're gone getting treatment, or maybe they're not able to be in school because of their immune system. So being able to be around peers and form some of those crucial skills. How do you work with your fellow cabin mates? How are you guys making decisions? And we'll do different things challenges that are for the group together, that encourages them to lean in. So I think those are just such important skills that really you can tell in adulthood who hasn't developed those skills.
Well, thank you for sharing. So one last question in terms of more of the macro view of children with chronic illnesses, from your observations and the great work that Cavett Kids have done for decades, what would you recommend in terms of policy changes or systemic changes that will make a difference in the patients and their family?
I think communication in every aspect. Say, for example, at school, there tries to be these policies, right? And this is the blanket policy. You have to go to the bathroom between classes. The bathroom thing seems to be such a big issue for kids. And because because of their medicine, they need to use the restroom more. And people think sometimes that they just want to go goof off. You shouldn't have to share your medical background and your story that's so personal to let them know why you need to go to the bathroom. So just things about, I think, simple questions and how we speak to each other, help me understand what you're going through. What do you need? What could make the classroom better for you? What could make, how do we lean into each other? Maybe as an adult, what accommodations do you need? And I think it's about kind of a society change of someone may look just fine, but maybe they need something else. It's about really getting to know people and helping everyone have an equal shot at a great experience.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ashley. Anything else you want to share about Cavett Kids Foundation before we finish the interview?
I would love for people to check it out. If you have a child with a chronic or life-threatening illness, we would love to serve. We're always looking for volunteers too. Sometimes I think after a diagnosis, especially, sometimes you want to close that chapter and you don't want that to be your story forever. But what you realize when you look back is that kind of made you who you are. That experience, although you don't wish it on anyone else, it shaped you into the person that you are today. And we hope people are thankful for that. And so if anyone is ever interested in serving, we would love to have them as well.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to everyone at Cavett Kids Foundation for the inspiring work that you do in every camp, in every program. We're going to have your website so everyone can visit. And I always also, besides volunteering, say, if you can donate, please support organizations that are doing amazing work like Cavett Kids. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
For the money insight of the day, I suggest you look for any opportunity you could have to withdraw funds from long-term investments or insurance policies. Many families don't know that these funds are not completely locked. If you can demonstrate financial hardship, you might have access to some of the money. For example, in life insurance policies, you could borrow some money or even have access early. For 529s, you can have the money. You might have to pay a penalty because it's not used for education. And even retirement accounts might let you get some of the money that you have saved over the years. Now, why would you do that? Because with childhood cancer, we know that income goes down, expenses go up, and can take a lot of years. So you don't want to go into debt, especially with a really bad APR, annual percentage rate. Instead, if you have access to these funds, might be a solution. Thank you again for being with us at the Broken Not Broke interview. You can follow in our socials. Thank you to our producer, Vanessa Toro. And please follow us and comment and like, and especially share with any family that might benefit. See you next time in the Broken Not Broke interview.